There is a question that separates destinies. A simple, almost uncomfortable question that most people avoid because it demands responsibility. It's not a question about money or career or talent.
It's a question about mind.
What truly separates those who build wealth, success, and freedom from those who spend their entire lives struggling to survive? This question haunted Napoleon Hill's life like an obsession. And it wasn't out of intellectual curiosity. It was out of necessity. Hill wanted to understand why some people seemed to have the wind at their backs, while others, equally intelligent and hardworking, lived trapped in cycles of scarcity, frustration, and unfulfilled promises. For over 20 years, Hill interviewed, studied, and lived with more than 500 millionaires. People who changed entire industries. People who created empires from nothing. People who, in many cases, started with fewer resources than you have today. And the further Hill delved into this investigation, the clearer a disturbing conclusion became. It wasn't the external world that created these people's destinies. It was their inner world. The vast majority believe that life works like this. First come the conditions, then the opportunities, then, perhaps, the success. High achievers think differently. They understand that the mind comes first. The decision comes before the evidence. Identity comes before the result. This is where the true psychology of success begins. The mistake that imprisons millions. The biggest lie told to humanity is that success depends solely on circumstances, on being born in the right place, on knowing the right people, on having luck at the right time. This belief is comfortable because it removes personal responsibility. If everything depends on the world, then failure is never mine. But Hill discovered something unsettling. That very belief is the root of mediocrity. People who believe that life controls their outcomes become reactive. They don't create, they respond. They don't decide, they wait. They don't command their minds, they obey their fears. Hill realized that truly successful men and women had something radically different. They took complete control of their own minds. They decided what to believe. They decided what to accept as truth. They decided what to ignore, even when the world screamed otherwise. And here comes the first major provocation of this chapter. Backhand index pointing right how many of your beliefs about money, success, and personal ability were actually chosen by you? The mind as a battlefield. Napoleon Hill said that the human mind is like fertile ground. Anything planted there, whether a positive or destructive thought, grows. The problem is that most people don't consciously plant. They just absorb. They absorb the fear of their parents. They absorb the limitations of the school. They absorb the narratives of scarcity in society. They absorb the idea that this isn't for people like us. And without realizing it, they end up living lives they never truly chose. The wealthy individuals studied by Hill did the opposite. They understood early on that repeated thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs become automatic actions. Therefore, before changing the external world, they changed their internal dialogue. While most people said, "That's impossible," they asked, "How can that possibly work?" While many thought, "This isn't the right time," they asserted, "I create the moment." This subtle difference changes everything. Purpose, the invisible divider. Hill realized that almost all millionaires had something in common. A defined purpose. It wasn't a vague dream. It wasn't a maybe someday. It was a clear, emotionally charged goal, repeated daily until it became part of his identity. Most people wake up without a defined purpose. They live on autopilot, reacting to the demands of the day. Great achievers, on the other hand, are guided by an inner compass. They know what they want, and more importantly, they know why they want it. Without purpose, the mind wanders. With purpose, the mind becomes focused, resilient, and creative. Hill was making a powerful statement. Those who lack a defined purpose work for those who do. This statement is unsettling because it's true. The inevitable internal conflict. There comes a time when every person must face a silent choice. To live according to what one believes, or to live according to what is expected of one. Thinking big requires courage. It requires confronting family, friends, and even the identity you've built up until now. Many people don't fail because of a lack of ability. They fail because they can't bear the discomfort of thinking differently. Hill observed that the most common fear among those who remain in mediocrity is not the fear of failure, it is the fear of judgment. And here a brutal question arises. Backhand index pointing right, are you willing to be misunderstood for a while in order to live the life you want forever? What if everything is wrong? Perhaps the most profound point of this chapter is this. What if everything you've learned about money, success, and security is wrong? What if stability isn't security, but a disguised prison? What if conscious risk-taking is actually protection against regret? What if the greatest danger isn't trying and failing, but never trying at all? Napoleon Hill didn't promise easy wealth. He promised something far more challenging: mastery of one's own mind. And that requires deconstruction. It requires relearning how to think. It requires accepting that the greatest battle is not in the market, the government, or the economy. It's within you. If the mind creates reality, and if beliefs shape decisions, then perhaps the real enemy of your success isn't a lack of money. Perhaps it's an old idea, repeated so many times that you've come to call it truth. In the next chapter, we'll delve deeper. How the experience of success transforms decisions, relationships, and freedom, and why some people thrive as soon as they change their way of thinking, even before they make money. If this chapter resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications bell, and comment below. Which belief about money are you starting to question today? The next chapter could change the way you see your own life. Success, for those who have never truly experienced it, seems distant. Almost abstract. Something that happens to others. But Napoleon Hill discovered something curious while associating with the wealthiest men of his time. Success doesn't begin as an external event. It begins as a silent shift in perception. Before making money, these people started thinking differently. Before changing their bank account, they changed the way they made decisions. Before achieving freedom, they changed what they accepted as normal. Most people believe that money transforms the mind. Hill proved the opposite. It is a transformed mind that attracts money. When success changes the way you make decisions. Imagine living without the constant sense of urgency. Without making decisions based solely on the fear of losing. Without saying yes to what hurts you just to pay the bills. Money isn't just about consumption, it's about mental space. Hill realized that the true impact of wealth lies in the quality of decisions. When someone stops living in survival mode, something profoundly changes. She thinks long-term. She assesses risks clearly. She chooses relationships more consciously. She invests energy in what really matters. People trapped by scarcity make decisions with a heavy stomach. People aligned with success make decisions with vision. And note, this begins before money even existed. The great mental inversion. Most people live like this. When I have money, I'll think big. Great achievers live like this. Because I think big, the money comes. This reversal changes everything. Henry Ford said that the greatest human mistake is believing that thought has no financial value. He was ridiculed, discredited, called crazy. But Ford wouldn't compromise his vision. Napoleon Hill realized that success has a curious effect. It doesn't eliminate problems, it changes the type of problem you face. Those who never take risks face the problem of regret. Those who take risks face the problem of growth. And growth always requires discomfort. Starting from scratch is not a disadvantage. Hill documented dozens of stories of people who started out with no capital, no support, and no security whatsoever. Artists, inventors, entrepreneurs. Many of them used precisely this lack of resources as creative fuel. Walt Disney slept in his office. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before the light bulb worked. Creators admired today were ignored for years. The pattern was clear. None of them allowed a lack of recognition to define their identity. Here a delicate question arises. Backhand index pointing right, do you measure your worth by what you've already achieved? Or by what you're still willing to build? Hill argued that failure only becomes definitive when a person accepts it as part of their identity. Money reveals. It doesn't create. One of the greatest popular illusions is believing that money transforms character. Hill observed something deeper. Money only amplifies who a person already is. Those who are generous become more generous. Those who are creative become more creative. Those who are insecure become more insecure. That's why so many people fear success. Subconsciously, they feel that wealth will expose their inner vulnerabilities. The true psychology of success requires inner alignment. Confused minds create unstable wealth. Clear minds build lasting fortunes. The paths are different, the principle is the same. Hill made it clear, there is no single path to success. Some got rich by investing, others by starting businesses, others by creating art, technology, or influence. The mistake lies in copying strategies without copying the mindset. The question isn't which path should I follow? The question is, am I willing to learn, make mistakes, persevere, and evolve? Because any path requires it. Many give up not because they made the wrong choice, but because they weren't prepared for the emotional cost of growth. When beliefs begin to crumble, at this stage, something begins to bother the viewer. Many of the excuses that seemed solid begin to lose their force. I don't have time. It's not the right moment. I don't have the talent. I wasn't born for this. Hill would call this invisible mental sabotage. These thoughts are so old they seem like facts, but they are merely repetitions. And here a silent turning point emerges. The moment when the person realizes that perhaps it's not a lack of ability, but a lack of internal permission. The uncomfortable truth. Napoleon Hill said that most people give up just before the change happens. Not because the plan failed, but because the old identity begins to die, and that's scary. Changing your life requires leaving old versions of yourself behind. And that hurts. That's why so many prefer to complain rather than act. That's why so many criticize those who try. Because the success of others confronts them with what they haven't done. And if decisions shape destinies, then perhaps the turning point in your life isn't about making money. Perhaps it's about thinking like someone who has already won, even before the victory appears. In the next chapter, we'll delve into the core of the psychology of success. The power of the mind, conscious choice, and applied persistence, and why imagining the future is one of the most dangerous and powerful abilities of humankind. If this chapter resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications bell, and comment. Which limiting belief are you starting to question now? There is a defining moment in every person's life. A silent instant, almost invisible to the outside world, but devastatingly powerful within. It's the moment when someone realizes that it's not the lack of opportunity that limits their life, it's how their mind responds to opportunities. Napoleon Hill discovered this by observing high achievers. Before changing results, they changed mental patterns. Before changing circumstances, they changed internal decisions. The psychology of success begins when you understand a hard-to-accept truth. The mind is not merely a reflection of reality, it is a creative force. The choice that almost no one notices. Most people believe they decide freely. But Hill realized something disturbing. Most people only react. React to fear. React to the opinions of others. React to the past. Few people make that choice consciously. And that difference defines everything. The men and women studied by Hill did not wait to feel ready. They made decisions before confidence existed. Confidence came later, as a consequence of repeated action. This is one of the most ignored truths about success. Clarity comes from movement, not from waiting. Visualization, a rehearsal of the future. One of Hill's most misunderstood concepts is that of visualization. Many confuse it with fantasy or magical thinking. But Hill was talking about something much more concrete. He observed that great creators mentally rehearsed their achievements before they existed in the physical world. Walt Disney walked through theme parks that hadn't even been built yet. Steve Jobs talked about products that only existed in his imagination. Inventors designed machines before touching a single part. The human mind doesn't clearly distinguish between what is experienced and what is intensely imagined. What you visualize with emotion becomes an internal reference point, and the brain works tirelessly to align reality with that reference point. Here a powerful question arises. Backhand index pointing right. What future is your mind rehearsing every day? Because that's where you're going. Persistence, the silent language of faith. Hill realized that the world doesn't respond to wishes. It responds to persistence. Ordinary people try a few times. Extraordinary people persist until their identity changes. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is the decision to continue even when the reward has not yet appeared. Henry Ford persevered when he was called incompetent. Edison persisted when he was called crazy. Creators we admire today endured when no one else believed in them. What sustained them? It wasn't blind optimism, it was inner conviction. Hill called this applied faith, acting repeatedly as if the goal were inevitable. Emotional discipline, the true hidden power. Here's a crucial point. It's not a lack of intelligence that prevents success, it's a lack of emotional control. Most people abandon projects not because they failed, but because they became emotionally exhausted. Hill observed that great achievers mastered their emotions. They did not allow themselves to be paralyzed by fear, nor intoxicated by euphoria. They understood that emotion is energy, and energy needs to be channeled. Emotional discipline is sticking to the plan even when motivation fluctuates. The eternal dilemma: comfort or growth. Every important choice carries a hidden price. Choosing comfort comes at the price of regret. Choosing growth comes at the price of discomfort. Napoleon Hill discovered that successful people are not necessarily more courageous. They have simply learned to tolerate discomfort for longer. While many run from fear, they walk through it, because they know something that few accept. Fear is the last guardian before expansion. The old identity needs to die. It's rarely discussed, but Hill understood it perfectly. For a new life to be born, an old identity must be abandoned. And that hurts. You leave behind versions of yourself, habits, relationships, ways of thinking. Many people begin to change, but retreat when they realize they can't take their old self with them. Here is the question that defines the chapter. Backhand index pointing right. Who do you need to stop being in order to become who you want to be? The invisible enemy, indecision. Hill called indecision the silent killer of dreams. Indecisive people consume mental energy without making any progress. They think, plan, revise, but they don't act. Great filmmakers made quick decisions and adjusted quickly. They knew that an imperfect decision is better than perfect paralysis. If choices build destinies, then perhaps the greatest risk in your life is not making mistakes. Perhaps it's about not choosing. In the next chapter, we will traverse the most difficult territory of the psychology of success: failure, rejection, pain, and the emotional chasm that separates those who give up from those who overcome it. There is an invisible point in the journey of anyone who decides to grow. A point that doesn't appear in books, isn't taught in school, and is rarely spoken aloud. Napoleon Hill called it the abyss. It's not the beginning, where everything seems exciting. It's not the success, where there's applause. It's the middle, the quiet place where motivation wanes, results take time to appear, and the mind begins to question everything. Almost everyone gets this far. Few cross over. When failure feels personal. Most people say they failed when, in fact, they were only tested. Hill observed that the problem is never the error itself. It's the interpretation of the error. Ordinary people think, I failed, therefore I am incapable. Extraordinary people think, that didn't work. What can I adjust? Failure is not a final judgment. It's raw feedback. But the ego hates that. When something goes wrong, fear creates narratives. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I've been deluding myself. And it is at this point that many turn back. The emotional price of growth. Little is said about the emotional impact of attempting something big. Growing hurts. Change hurts. Leaving familiar territory hurts. Hill realized that almost no one gives up because of a lack of skill. They give up because they weren't prepared for the emotional cost of success. Doubt arrives. Loneliness arrives. Silence arrives. And often, the results haven't yet materialized to justify the effort. This is where most people return to the comfort of mediocrity. Rejection, the hidden test. Napoleon Hill discovered something curious. The closer a person is to breaking their limit, the more resistance they encounter. Criticism mounts. Rejections accumulate. Doors seem to be closing.
This is not bad luck. It's a test.
Every major change requires a psychological filtering process. Hill observed that the world rejects you not because you are wrong, but because you have not yet proven sufficient consistency. Rejection is not a no. It's a not yet. The story of the 3 meters of gold. This is one of the most important stories in how to think and grow rich. A group of prospectors dug for months in search of gold. Tired and frustrated, they gave up. They sold everything to a man who, before digging, consulted an engineer. Result: the gold was only 3 meters below where they stopped. They didn't fail because they lacked gold. They failed because they lacked informed persistence. Hill used this story to teach something vital. Most people give up at the point closest to the turning point. To persist is not to repeat the mistake. Here's a dangerous mix-up. Persistence is not about insisting on the same mistake. It's about continuing to move forward while adjusting your strategy. Hill taught a balance between reason and emotion. To persist blindly is recklessness. To persist with learning is power. Those who succeed adjust, learn, refine, but never abandon their purpose. Comfort zone. The invisible prison. The greatest enemy of growth is not failure. It's complacency. The comfort zone doesn't hurt. It numbs. It offers immediate security and demands freedom in the long term. Hill realized that many people prefer a known pain to an unknown possibility. But the unknown is where the potential lies. Internal dialogue at a critical moment. In the abyss, the mind begins to converse with you. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should give up. Maybe I'm too late. Maybe I'm alone. These thoughts are normal. But they are not orders, they are tests. Hill said that whoever learns to observe thought without obeying it crosses the abyss. Those who believe everything they think return. The synthesis of the psychology of success. At the most difficult point, Hill taught a powerful integration. A reason to adjust course. Emotion to maintain energy. Creativity to innovate. Discipline to continue. When these 4 elements align, the individual becomes almost unstoppable. Not because it never falls, but because it always gets back up consciously. The transformation begins from within. Ultimately, the abyss serves a purpose. It doesn't exist to destroy you. It exists to transform you. It is there that the weak mentality abandons the path, and the prepared mind takes control. You don't cross the chasm while remaining the same person. If almost everyone gives up halfway through, if failure is just a test, then perhaps the greatest secret to success isn't talent, luck, or intelligence. Perhaps it's simply about not giving up when everything inside you is telling you to stop. In the next and final chapter, we will close the circle. Legacy, the true meaning of wealth, and why true success begins and ends in the mind. We've reached the final point of the journey, but not the end of the road. Napoleon Hill never wrote how to think and grow rich to teach anyone how to get rich in the superficial sense of the word. Money was merely the visible consequence. The true objective of the book was always something else, to show how a well-trained mind is capable of creating any form of wealth. Over 2 decades of studying some of the most successful men and women of their time, Hill realized something that few people are ready to accept. Sustainable success is an internal construct before it is external. And everything you've seen so far, purpose, decision, visualization, persistence, overcoming challenges, points to this truth. Wealth is not what you accumulate, it's what you become. Society teaches that getting rich is about accumulating. Hill taught that getting rich is about transforming oneself. Transform the way you think. Transform the way you decide. Transform your relationship with fear, time, and effort. Ordinary people ask, how much will this earn me? People aligned with success ask themselves, who will I become if I follow this path? This change of question completely alters the course of events. Because everything you build on the outside is limited by the person you are on the inside. Freedom, the true luxury. The most prominent examples studied by Hill weren't just seeking money to spend. They were seeking freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to create. Freedom to say no. Freedom to make mistakes without destroying your own life. Money in this context is merely a tool. A free mind is the true asset. Without mental mastery, wealth becomes a prison. With mental mastery, any situation becomes an opportunity. Purpose transforms money into impact. Hill realized something essential. People who get rich solely out of greed rarely find peace. Those who combine wealth and purpose build something greater than themselves. When money serves a purpose, to educate, create, employ, transform, it multiplies meaningfully. This is the point where wealth ceases to be about ego and becomes a legacy. The cycle of true success. Napoleon Hill implied a powerful equation: correct mindset, disciplined action, continuous learning, equals legacy creation ***. This cycle doesn't end when the money arrives. It renews itself. Each achievement increases responsibility. Each victory demands greater awareness. Each step forward invites further growth. Those who understand this never arrive. They only evolve. The trap of empty success. Hill also warned of a silent danger: achieving external success without internal growth. These people accumulate possessions, but not peace. They make money, but lose meaning. Therefore, Hill insisted that the psychology of success needs to be aligned with values. Without it, success becomes noise, not achievement. The true inheritance. Ultimately, legacy isn't about what you leave behind in the world. It's about what you activate in people. An example. An idea. A courage awakened. Hill believed that the greatest human triumph is teaching someone to think differently. Because those who change their way of thinking never again accept a small life. The final question. After everything you've heard so far, one question remains. Backhand index pointing right, what kind of life are you building with the mindset you have today? Because the mind that brought you here isn't necessarily the same one that will take you further. The silent invitation. Napoleon Hill didn't force anyone to change. He simply showed them the way. The invitation has always been this: take control of your mind, and the rest will begin to fall into place. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to wait any longer. It all starts with an internal decision. True wealth isn't just in a bank account. It's in clarity, in autonomy, in the awareness that you are capable of creating, learning, and evolving. When the mind changes, destiny obeys. This is the psychology of success. If this journey has transformed your way of thinking, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications bell, and share this video with someone who needs to awaken to their own potential. Remember, true fortune begins in the mind, and legacy is born from the choices you make from today onward.